Baltimore Ravens 7-round mock draft, no trades. Here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media. I apologize last week. I was pretty sick. My voice still kind of rough. That's why there was less content out last week. But I had to get back, even though I'm not feeling great, for Mock Draft Monday. If you're new to the channel, new to the series, every Monday of the offseason, from the day after the Ravens season ends until the NFL draft, I produce a Mock Draft Monday video, 7 rounds, no trades, as I do my scouting. And this time I've got something special for you. You'll get to see the start of something that I'm going to be doing in every video, because somebody in the last comment basically said, like, hey, I want you to put up some graphics while you're doing the mock drafts. And I've been doing that a little bit in the top right, which I will have with the, just picks going through the line. But on the left side, I'm going to start having some more content with my own scouting reports, putting them up on the left side so that you guys can see it while I'm talking. I just have not completed all of them. I have one done as I'm posting this video. My goal is to do one every single day to fill out a new one, so that by the end of the year, I do have a draft profile for almost every single player I end up drafting in these mock drafts. But as always, comment your mock drafts of the week below so I can check them out. Comment any players that you really like that I drafted, or players you want me to check out. Some of these players that you guys commented on, especially my second round pick. You guys have commented about him a ton. So with all that in mind, we're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. Make sure to subscribe. But here we go. Starting off, round 1, pick 27. The Baltimore Ravens are on the clock. I think they go in a couple of options. I think they could go receiver if like a superstar goes. I think they could go tackle if someone slides. But I think the most likely scenario is the Baltimore Ravens go out there and they draft their edge rusher. And I think the best edge rusher for the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27, unless someone slides, I got to go with my guy, Donovan Ezerako. He was the first player I drafted for the Baltimore Ravens. He was in these mock draft series. He was the first player. And I was like, how is this guy seen as a late second-round pick? And now Tankathon has him as barely a second-round pick, looking at a potential first-rounder. This guy's a stud. Yes, he's undersized. However, he utilizes everything. He has strength. He has great speed. He has fantastic bend to get around those tackles. He wins inside. He wins outside. He has an abundance of pass rush moves. The only question mark is how he's going to hold up against the bigger offensive linemen. But this guy was wildly productive in the ACC. He can go against these guys. And he's a late first round edge rusher. Is this guy a top 15 player in this draft class? No, but I think this guy could absolutely be a number 1 pass rusher on an elite defense in the NFL in honestly like 3 years. And I think this year, his rookie year, he would absolutely be a third down pass rusher that could get you 5 to 8 sacks this season. I think he's a really good player. And for a first-round pass rusher, that's exactly what you're looking for. He's not the run stopper that Odafe Oweh was coming out of college, or Tavius Robinson, but we don't need that. We need a guy that can go put his hand in the dirt or stand up in the outside linebacker position and get by somebody in the playoffs. I think Donovan Ezerako absolutely brings that, not just for this year, but for the rest of his career. I think he's a really promising young player. And also, first scouting report I did. Check it out. That's the only one for this video. Again, I'm gonna make some more for the next couple of videos, but we do have the counter going up in this corner so that you guys can see that. But moving on to round 2, pick 59. This is somebody that I've been seeing people say we should take him in the first round, and I've thought about it. I think he's a really good player, but I saw him available in the second. I was like, there's no way we don't take him. Nick Amenwori out of South Carolina, the safety that a lot of people, Daniel Jeremiah, known former Ravens scout, huge with NFL Network at this point in his career. He basically said, like, if I'm the Ravens, and he's available day 1, I think I'm pulling the trigger. I saw him available day 2, and I was like, I have to get him. 6'3", athletic, fantastic ball skills, smart, decent against the run. He's a do-it-all safety in the NFL. He reminds me of maybe a combination of Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton, because he's not Kyle Hamilton. I don't want to ever compare anybody to Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton is like build a perfect safety in, a cryogenic chamber and just like breed it from the embryo or something like that. You get Kyle Hamilton. Nick Amenwori, he does have the size. He does have the athleticism. He's not as physical a player as Kyle Hamilton is, but I compared him to Geno Stone more in the sense that he's able to get extremely opportunistic interceptions. That's not the only way he gets interceptions, but that's one of the things that we've been missing in the playoffs. We haven't forced a turnover in the postseason since Marcus Peters had an interception against the Tennessee Titans. That's embarrassing. For a team that's supposed to contend for a Super Bowl, being unable to get any turnovers, that's bad, right? It's been a combination of dropped interceptions, guys not being in the right place. But Nick Emmanwori has been fantastic at South Carolina, not just this year, but last year, the year before that, at getting these opportunistic interceptions, as well as getting the difficult interceptions that are, you bait the quarterback, right? You jump the read. He can do that as well, which Geno Stone, that was not necessarily his skill. He was an opportunistic pick machine, and I got to give him props. He got paid. He did a good job in Cincinnati, right? That's what he does. Nick Emmanwori has the size to play over the top. He has the size to guard any tight end. He has the athleticism to guard any tight end, and he has the instincts to make big-time plays and not just get interceptions, but take them back to the house, right? We drafted Nate Wiggins because he's a playmaker in the secondary. He can get you picks. He can house them. We saw that with his first career interception. He housed it. Nick Emmanwori had multiple pick sixes in his NFL career. I want to say he had multiple last season. That's how good he's been. Phenomenal with the ball in his hands, rangy, exactly what you want with a safety. And him, Kyle Hamilton, and Ardarius Washington, I think we'll keep him, would be a phenomenal. That would be the best safety trio in the NFL. And any one of those guys could play in any of the three spots, right? Slot, box, over top. All of them can do it. So I think it would be a fantastic move for the Ravens to get him. I don't think it would be a bad move to get him in round one. And honestly, if I was putting a grade on him, I'd probably put like an early 2. The problem is there's a ton of great safeties in this class. So if, some people value other players, Emmanwori could absolutely slide, and we should absolutely pounce if he does. Moving on to pick 3, round 3, pick 91. I feel like I could have gone tackle, but when I was looking at the offensive line, there was nobody. Like, there was nobody that I felt like, was worth taking, because I didn't think there were any more just starting tackles that you could draft, right? You can always take a shot on a guard and they end up being able to start year one, which, trust me, I do take some guards in this class. But tackle, I just didn't see anyone round 3. So with that in mind, like with this mock draft, we're probably keeping Ronnie, or we're keeping Makari and shifting Rosengarten over to left tackle. Like, that's honestly probably what's going to have to happen. I don't necessarily love that, but I decided to go with wide receiver. I think the best wide receiver late round 3, obviously if someone else slides, sure. Trey Harris is the guy I went with out of Ole Miss. He's been Jackson Dart's wide receiver 1 for 3 years. He has been a very productive player, 1,000 yards, I think, each of the last 3 years. I know the last 2, 9 or 10 touchdowns almost every year of his collegiate career. He is a senior, but he's 6'3". He's about 215 pounds. And this is not the typical 6'3" wide receiver where I get up here and I'm like, this is the jump ball guy we've been looking for. Trey Harris isn't necessarily a jump ball guy. He doesn't have a fantastic contested catch rate, but what he does well is kind of what I see out of this Ravens offense. The majority of his plays, when I'm watching him and watching this Ole Miss offense, it's an interesting offense to watch, right? But it's quick hitches, it's screens, it's digs, it's, a little bit of outs, but mostly just things short or intermediate over the middle of the field. And that's exactly what he was doing. And he was very productive at it. He can catch a hitch, fall forward, make a guy miss. And that's something that Lamar Jackson, I think, needs, is these quick reads, because it feels like so many times we play against these top tier pass rushers and the Ravens pass scheme ends up being like, Lamar drops back and it's like buying time. I'd love to see a Lamar Jackson game where the play calls allow him to just, 3-step drop and fire. And Trey Harris's skill set absolutely does that, because he doesn't just have to be a screen guy, right? He can run you the 10-yard hitch. He can hit you on the end pattern. And he has decent athleticism. He does not have top end speed, but again, at his size, he does have the ability to make difficult catches, just not necessarily his strong suit. But I think he's a good wide receiver, and I think he does exactly what the Ravens would potentially need. I looked up an NFL comp just to see what people were thinking, and someone said Alec Pierce, and I was like, honestly, I really liked Alec Pierce in the draft. I had him as about a round 3 player, and he's ended up being a very, very productive wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. If you don't remember, he was the wide receiver with Desmond Ridder coming out of Cincinnati when they went to the college football playoff, obviously now in Indianapolis, and he's just a solid player. Trey Harris, solid football player. Don't necessarily think he's going to turn into Antonio Brown, turn into Julio Jones. But hey, this guy could end up being a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, a good wide receiver 2. It's good enough for me. And year one, he'd only be a wide receiver 3. So I think he could absolutely fill that role the Ravens need because we don't know about Tylen. We don't know about, Nelly and, all the other wide receivers on this depth chart. Trey Harris is very different from Tez Walker, and we could utilize both of them in different sets. Now moving on to round 4. I'm going to put up the round 4 and round 5 players here, actually, just so that you guys can see them. I'll talk about them briefly because, again, we have 11 picks in this class. But I go with Antoine Powell-Ryland out of Virginia Tech, Luke Kandra out of Cincinnati, and Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU. Antoine Powell-Ryland, I think I took him in my first mock draft, and he was like a round 7 player. Antoine Powell-Ryland is a baller. I watched him at Virginia Tech. I watched a lot of ACC games. He is an absolute difference maker. He is a game wrecker. I think he had 14 sacks this year. He had 10 plus last year. He's been a dominant force in college football, and he has the prototypical NFL size. He has the athleticism. He can win in multiple ways. And I honestly am pretty surprised that he's looked at as a round 4 player and potentially round 5. I think he's an absolute stud. And drafting 2 pass rushers, guys, look at what the Eagles did. They take pass rusher every year. And eventually they had enough to where they'd take one guy out that's a start. Like they take out Nolan Smith, they bring in a backup, boom, he gets a sack, right? Let's get to that with the Ravens, right? Continue to draft these pass rushers, continue to draft guys that can make impacts and are productive. Antoine Powell-Ryland, Donovan Ezeraku, absolutely do that. Then Luke Kandra, guard out of Cincinnati. I had to go offensive line. There were no tackles available that I felt like were worth it. Luke Kandra does have the prototypical size. I considered, you guys let me know what you think about it, but the North Carolina guard, I saw him on the board in late round 4, and I was like, I can't pull the trigger. If you don't know, he's a 5'11" guard. A little bit worrisome, but he looked really good at the Senior Bowl. So I don't know if the Ravens will take that shot in the dark, but at the same time, if it works out, right, it could be good, but I feel like Luke Kandra was a safer pick, because he's somebody that has the prototypical size. And I don't think he allowed a sack last year. So that's definitely a plus in my book. Moving on to Emory Jones Jr. This was somebody that was looked at as, maybe a premier tackle option in the NFL going into last year. Ended up having a little bit of struggles, but hey, he has, he played in the SEC. He allowed a couple of sacks last year, but he's 6'6", 300 plus pounds. And that's a developmental pass rusher with the traits that I think the Ravens could absolutely take advantage of. Just wouldn't be starting this year. And like I've said before, always fire on offensive linemen when you have a bunch of picks. Always fire. Emory Jones Jr. is worth a shot. Moving on to round 6, we have 4 picks in the 6th round. I'm going to go through again, 6th round, and then I'll talk about all of them. Jay Higgins, Jackson Slater, Logan Brown, and Jaquindon Jackson. Starting off with Jay Higgins, I'm not going to lie, guys. This is my favorite player in the draft. I love Jaden Higgins. Or Jay Higgins, sorry, not Jaden Higgins. I do love Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. But Jay Higgins is a stud. Pass coverage linebacker, rangy, fast, big, smart, productive, was on a great defense. This is the real deal linebacker. I still don't understand. I'm yet to see an argument as to why this guy isn't, a day 2 player. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Now, we'll see what happens at the combine. Maybe he's coming off of an injury. I've yet to find anything, any explanation as to why people aren't viewing him as high as I am. But I think Jay Higgins is an absolute stud, and he would be a perfect will linebacker in the NFL, and especially a perfect will linebacker next to Roquan Smith. He can cover a tight end. He can, shoot an A gap. He can stop the run. But most of all, really, it's just the pass coverage. He can drop in his own. He can cover a guy in man. And he has ball skills. Stud linebacker, Jay Higgins, huge fan. You guys know it. He's probably going to be my next scouting report I do, so you'll see him when I probably draft him in the next mock draft. If you guys are fans of the channel, you'll know some previous of my favorite players in the draft. Huge Puka Nacua fan. If you guys remember that, I drafted him in almost every mock draft. But also, and obviously not all of them are like super hits. Simi Fehoko was the original. Love Simi Fehoko. Still one of my favorite players in the NFL. Obviously, he's with the Chargers now. So shout out to Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman utilizing Simi Fehoko over there. But then looking next up, Jackson Slater, guard out of Sacramento State. I believe he had 0 sacks, 0 pressure, or 0 hits allowed on his quarterback, like maybe 2 hurries, 0 hits, 0 sacks. He is coming out of a small school in Sacramento State, but again, he has the size. He has the pass blocking ability. He's not a great run blocker, but I feel like we kind of need a great pass blocker because that's kind of where our offensive line, I feel like, has struggled a little bit is, those interior rushes, because that's the easiest way to beat Lamar. If you get interior rush and you have and you're able to contain him, it's over, right? If you have a good edge rush, yes, you have a chance. But Lamar's so good at making that guy miss. It's much harder to make a guy miss up the middle. So I think getting a good pass blocking guard, again, we don't know who our starters are going to be next year. Always worth a shot. And then Logan Brown, tackle out of Kansas, had to get another tackle. I've drafted him before. Again, 6'6", I believe 0 sacks allowed in the last 3 years at tackle. Like, this guy was dominant at Kansas. And again, dominance in college football, late, draft pick. I will always take a productive offensive lineman because they're just too valuable to pass up. And then Jaquindon Jackson, I like getting a running back in this draft class. I'm not a huge fan of Rasheen Ali's game. I don't necessarily think it makes a lot of sense to have him as our third string running back. He has fumbling issues. Jaquindon Jackson is much more similar to a Derrick Henry, 6'3", 225, 230 pounds. He gained a lot of weight last year. So we'll see at the combine, which is happening this week. I will make videos about it, but we'll see what he ends up measuring in at, because he put on like 10 pounds before last year. So we'll see. Like, Zay Flowers put on like 15 pounds before the combine. At the combine, he was way heavier than he played in college, which is a huge boost for him in that draft, getting him to a first round player. We'll see what Jaquindon Jackson weighs in at. Some people list him at 6'2" as well, but I think he's 6'3". I'm going to guess he's going to weigh in at like 232. And, physical running back. We don't have a backup for Derrick Henry that can run between the tackles like he can. Jaquindon Jackson in this draft is probably that guy, maybe an Ollie Gordon, but Ollie Gordon was off the board. So Jaquindon Jackson, you're my guy. Transfer out of Utah. Pretty solid player. Again, nothing special, but backup running back is a need. He can do it. And then final selection, round 7, pick 244. I went with Jabbar Muhammad out of the University of Oregon. He's about 5'11", very good zone coverage player, not necessarily very good in man coverage, but we need corners. We need depth. And I didn't draft any corners, and I felt bad. Jabbar Muhammad was the best player we still had available. He's someone that I feel like in the NFL, right? He's not necessarily going to be a game-breaking player, but at the same time, your backup corners, they don't have to change the game. They just have to, you just want the guy to not be noticeable. And I never felt like when I was watching the Oregon Ducks, I was just like, if you throw at Jabbar, you're good. It was like, no, the Oregon Ducks have a really good defense, right? You can't just target anybody. And Jabbar Muhammad wasn't their best corner, but he also wasn't their worst corner. He's somebody in the NFL that I could see coming in and being a CB4, maybe a CB3, and developing into someone that could maybe be a starter. But even if he is a career backup, right? That's special teams. That's, being, coming in for injured players, coming in when guys are tired and dropping into that zone, right? And I think that's what he's going to do. And I think I had to get corner in this draft, and he was the only one available. And I knew you guys would flame me if I went 2 mock drafts in a row without drafting a corner. But that's the mock draft. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe for more. Let me know who you guys want me to make my next, I put it up earlier, but my next scouting report. I think it's going to be Jay Higgins. But after that, let me know. I put out a video on Donovan Ezraku. Let me know if you guys want the shorts to be posted, or if you guys just want me to, just make them and put them in the videos and post them on, the community section. I don't know. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe for more, and I'll see all of you again tomorrow.